friends, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a vlog. I don't know if it's gonna be a weekly reading vlog, if it's gonna be a month-long vlog. I don't know. I don't have any plans for this video. I'm just gonna read and talk about my reads. All of these books are due back to my library on the 3rd, and it is the 30th, so we need to finish all of these this week. And I don't know where to start. I do know that I have to I need to read a recap of the first one to get to this one. But so what I'm thinking is all of these were around the same time. Like Black Cake came out in June, and then the Book of Everlasting Things came out in January, this came out in May, and this came out in April. So relatively around the same amount of time, which means that like the readership should be, it's obviously not going to be, you know, equal because in variable amounts of things, but the hype would have already died down at this point because it's been almost a year since they came out. So like all the people that were highly anticipating the book have already read it, and the people that are more inclined to give it a favorable rating have already read it. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna start with whichever one has the highest rating. Black Cake has a 4.15. That's incredibly high. So that is the first one. The Book of Everlasting Things has a 4.07. We will go Young Mungo. This has a 4.32. I'm not surprised because this author is a Booker Prize winner, and so, you know, everybody showed up for this book if they liked his first one, and obviously it's won a prize, so a lot of people are aware of it. Fevered Star. So this has a 4.12. So that means that this is the order that I'll be reading them. So first up we have Young Mungo. This is by the author of Shuggie which is a book that I have on my TBR, so if I enjoy this, I will know what to expect with Shuggie, but this is about two young boys who are supposed to be like rivals because one is Protestant, one's Catholic, and they were just like from warring families, and they fall in love. They start off as friends and they fall in love. I don't know if it's a romance, meaning it ends in an HEA or HFN, or if it's just a love story. I have heard that Shuggie is very hard to read, very trigger warning heavy, very emotional, so I'm excited to get into this one. Then we will read Black Cake, which is about two siblings who get left the Caribbean black cake and a voice note from their mother after she passes, and the voice note is retelling all of the things that she experienced in her life moving from the Caribbean to America after she was accused of murder. We will then read Fevered Star. This is the sequel to The Black Sun, one of my favorite fantasies of 2020. It is like a pre-Columbian fantasy, and there's like God. It was very, very good. So I'm excited to get back into this world and see. I think it's only a duology, so that might be the wrap up of the series. And then the last book that we have is the Book of Everlasting Things, which is a love story set during the Indian and the struggle for Indian independence. We're going to start with Young Mungo, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully these are all 5 stars. Hopefully I have no DNFs. Doesn't seem very likely for me, but I want to give them my best shot. So let's get into the vlog and see which ones I enjoy. Okay friends, I am 100 pages into, well, 110 pages into the Young Mungo, and this was reminding me a lot of A Little Life, so I decided to do some annotating-ish, some decorating that I've been meaning to do in A Little Life for a while, that you are seeing now or you already saw. But this I've heard compared to A Little Life, and it definitely has very similar feelings. So this is about Mungo, who is a young boy, and we have alternating timelines, and it's kind of unclear where the timelines line up. In one of the timelines, Mungo has been sent to an unclear destination with two men who his mother knows through AA, and they have taken him from his home, and they are out in the middle of nowhere, and they are camping, and there are some bad vibes, bad moods, bad intentions, I think, coming up with them, but it's two guys who we don't really know. And then in the other timeline, we have Mungo set against the backdrop of his mother, who's an alcoholic, disappearing for several weeks, and he has an older brother named Hamish who is in a gang. He lives separately from them, and he has like a girlfriend and a baby, and he sort of runs the local band of like bad boys who like go and steal and all that kind of stuff, and they kind of include Mungo in some of those scenarios. And then we have Jody, who is his oldest sister, who is sort of his mother, who takes care of him, and she works an extra job. She works a job. And she has a boyfriend who is married. She's underage. For the majority of the 100-page mark, he is in despair about his missing mother. She has been known to go missing, to like get really drunk and then just kind of go off on her own and leave her children to fend for themselves. Mungo kind of just has to like live. He lives on his own. No one really takes care of him in regards to the day-to-day. Like his sister definitely makes sure that he has food and takes care of him in that way, but he doesn't really have any other companionship. And he meets this boy who is taking care of birds. He's like capturing pigeons and mating them, and then like capturing other people's birds basically and mating them with his birds and keeping them, and they become friends. And all I know is that it is the relationship between him and James. James is the young boy, and I don't know much more than that. There is definitely a very like melancholy feel, this life is hard and bad shit happens sort of mentality, like everybody suffers sort of deal. And Mungo himself isn't like the most dynamic character, I would say. He feels very young, and he also feels very removed from the narrator. We don't really get much of a sense of who Mungo is, and we kind of feel sympathy for him through the things that happen to him. Jude, I hate to compare it to A Little Life, but that's sort of like the comparison, I think, that is a common comparison because they're written very similarly. But Jude is a very compelling character in himself, and I'm not really feeling a huge connection to Mungo. I feel a connection in that he's a young boy, and I feel sympathies for what he is going through and the things that are being done to him and sort of like the neglect that he's experiencing, but I don't feel any massive drive, and I don't think we've done much. We've spent a lot of time with him, like with little scenes with his brother and sister and his mom to sort of set up the dysfunction within his family. His brother is very violent in every regard. His sister is just kind of tired, and his mom is neglectful and absent. So there's definitely, you know, sympathy for Mungo's character, not seeing where the story is going, and what the point of the other timeline is. I will say one thing that has been a little bit harder for me to get into this book is that the dialect used is Scottish, like, so it's hard to distinguish what is being said, and I kind of have to think through it. But I think the longer I read the book, obviously I'll get more acclimated to it. The pieces that are not dialogue are obviously not hard to understand, but the dialogue itself is like Scottish. So that has been my one hookup, but it's not, you know, and it's not affecting my enjoyment of the story or my ability to connect to the story. I'm just not used to literary fiction and the ways that it tends to, one, feel meandering, but also have like these seemingly irrelevant scenes strung together. I do need to get through this book and 4 others, so like I said, in not a few days. So I'm kind of trying to read what I can. My camera battery is flashing, so we'll talk again when I have some updates. Good. Oh, I just spilled my coffee all over my bed and it went up my sleeve while I was trying to. Okay, friends, I have some reading updates for you, but first, I have quite a big day ahead of me that I am excited to bring you along with. I am working from home today and I need to run some errands. I need to get some stuff from Target, and then I need to get reptile food, and I also need to go to the library to return some books and see if I can renew some books. And I thought I would stop by Barnes & Noble and get a copy of Chain of Thorns. I was just originally going, like I had pre-ordered it and then I canceled the pre-order, but now I think I just want to have it like in my hands, even if I'm not going to read it anytime soon based on my schedule. I still just kind of want to have it, and like I might pick up another manga or something like that while I'm there. So that is the big plan for today. I may or may not take you with me. I'm very weird about filming in public. I'm not quite comfortable with it yet, so we'll see how that goes. But that's not for another hour. Like everything opens at 9 and it's only 8, so I'll be piddling around the house getting ready and stuff, and then we'll go ahead and leave. I thought I would update you on the young mungo, which I am 214 pages in. Okay, so everything that I assumed would happen has happened so far. There was a scene in present day with him and those 2 guys where he is raped by both of them. It's not extremely graphic, but you know what's happening. Doing something to one of the guys that raped him. And then in the past timeline, his mother has shown back up and she is like trying to be a mother, and he feels very inclined to take care of her. He feels like that's his responsibility. And his sister was pregnant and she got an abortion from the teacher that she was having the relationship with, that she was being groomed by. I decided to read some reviews of this book. I usually hold off to the end, but I kind of wanted to get a feel for what people were thinking, because that last like 100 pages or so really changed my mind about the book. And again, I don't know if it's because I'm a naturally empathetic person or if I'm enjoying the story itself and thinking that I'm connecting to it emotionally because the writing is good. And the largest complaint that I saw was that this is a retread of Shugibane, which is this author's first book, the book that he won a bunch of, you know, awards off of, and that this just felt like a older version of that. Like Mungo is just an older version of Shugibane. And I haven't read Shugibane, but if this is like the less good version, then I'm excited to get to it. I think what I'm discovering about literary fiction that I really enjoy is the first part of the book is always like this very slow, kind of meandering introduction, or at least to the books that I've read thus far like this. These slow meandering introduction, and then things start to pick up and all of the pieces start to come together. So at the core, I think this book is about the working class. This is set in the late 1980s or early 1990s, I think. It is a story about a boy who falls in love, a Protestant boy who falls in love with a Catholic boy, but I'm at the 200 page mark and that hasn't really happened yet. They've had pretty minimal interactions. This is mostly about this working class community in Glasgow and the emphasis of masculinity and presenting as a masculine person, masculine man specifically, in a certain way, and what happens if you don't. And so there's a heavy emphasis on manning up and him being taught how to be a man. His brother, like I said in a previous clip, was or is part of a street gang, and he's taken it upon himself to man him up, to show him how to be a man, and then this fishing trip, which is what it is, that his mother sends him on to show him how to be a man, is another extension of that. So masculinity is a huge part of the story, and that obviously plays into like a queer man's identity, and he hasn't ascertained that he's queer yet, or that he's, you know, that he might like men, that he might like something other than women, and he doesn't really have any like romantic inclinations towards women, but we haven't had any internal or external conversations about that. He's just mentioned to other people that he's not really like into women. We are getting alternating points of view between him and his sister, and I would say that they're like, Mungo is definitely the main character, but his sister also plays a big part, because he has such a toxic and uncomfortable relationship with his mother. Jody is definitely like the adult in his life, the like leading figure, the person that takes care of him. I get where it's going now. Like, I understand the story. It's really hard to read. Obviously the multiple rape scene was hard, and I think what's always the hardest is the aftermath, because like I've said, most of the time from what I've read in books like this, the scenes aren't like graphic, but the aftermath is always, it's always like this numb coldness of shame and shock, and you're working through those thoughts with the character. What makes it even worse in this is they rape him, and then the next morning he leaves the tent and they are still there, and they basically make a big joke out of it, and they're basically like, oh well, because you're gay, we heard from your mom that you're gay, are you sure you didn't like it? Like, things like that, and like discrediting what they did to him. And then when he would say, why did you do that to me, I didn't want it, they would, oh, it was a joke, you'll like it one day, that's just what guys do, it's better than getting a woman pregnant, sort of thing. And it's horrid, it's really hard to read. And I also read a review that said like, this hits every single note that you expect it to. The exact thing that you think is going to happen with Jody and the teacher happens. The exact thing that you think is going to happen with Mungo and the men happens, and like the story plays out exactly how you think it would. And I don't think that that's a discredit to the book. Like, that person was saying it's a discredit to the book, but this book isn't trying to be twisty-turny. It's not trying to be shock and awe in that way. It's not trying to subvert any tropes, at least at this point. It's showing you a very realistic life of a young queer person, boy specifically, in the 1990s, and what that was like, specifically in a working class community where masculinity is at the forefront. So I don't think it's trying to like be this twisty-turny thing that you're not expecting. It's trying to give you what exactly you're expecting, because that's real life. So those last 100 pages definitely swayed my opinion. And again, is it because of the horrible shit that's happened in the last 100 pages? I think partly, and also because I can see how everything is coming together. Previously, it wasn't like I was completely obtuse to the point of the story. Like, I knew what the point of the story was, but I was struggling to take all of these little scenes and put them together. Yeah, I'm like I think I'm like 53% of the way through, and yeah, it's good. It's good. At this point, I would maybe give it like a really strong 4. I don't know if it's quite 5 level yet. It definitely invoked the feelings that it was trying to invoke for me, but I don't necessarily know if that's like 5-star worthy. I will say that like Douglas Stewart's writing is good. I am not well enough versed in literary fiction to say like, oh, it was beautiful or not. That's what I saw a lot in reviews of like, oh, this is really beautiful writing. I don't consider this beautiful writing. It's not my cup of tea, but I also don't really read a lot of literary fiction, and writing styles change depending on the genre that you're reading. So I can't really say if this is like really beautiful or not. It's very succinct, it's very accessible, it is intentional, I will say. Like, there's no wasted words, there's no wasted time. It does pack the emotional punch that the author was going for but I wouldn't say the actual like syntax, sentence structure, word usage is beautiful in that way. So yeah, that's where I am with this. I am going to probably putz around until I am ready to leave, and hopefully next time I update you I will have Chain of Thorns in hand. I still cannot believe that she's not writing any more books in the Shadowhunter world. And I hate to say it, but I don't think I'm gonna read anything else from the Shadowhunter world. I have been considering doing a Shadowhunter full reread and doing one book per video, like one video per book, starting at the Infernal Devices and reading all the way till the Dark Artifices. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. Also, I think there is a series that she's coming out with that's after the Dark Artifices, so hopefully once I do that one video per, I'll have already had more information about that. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I probably will still do it regardless, but yeah, that's just, I grew up on this series. Like, I first started the Mortal Instruments, fell in love with the Infernal Devices. It's a series that I've reread every year. Scared of it ending. That sounds silly, but I am. Like, it's weird that it's ending, and I don't know if I'm gonna read anything else by her because I have such a strong emotional attachment to the Shadowhunter world that has sort of carried me through the ups and downs in my reading and the changes that my reading has taken, that I don't know if another book by her without the emotional strings of the Shadowhunter world would have the same impact on me. Like, if I would enjoy it as much or even enjoy it at all, I don't know, because I naturally go into her books expecting greatness for me and ignoring things that might not be the best, and I don't know if I could do that in another series. Who knows? I will be back hopefully with Chain of Thorns and we'll talk. Okay friends, I have returned for my mini outings. Like I said, I'm not good at filming in public, so for all my Target girlies out there who are Target stans, probably were thinking to me, Target has books, which I don't shop at Target that often because a bitch is on a budget, so I forgot that they had books. And then they had Miss on like a display case. It does have a 20% off sticker, which is unfortunate, but this is over 800 pages, or 800 pages exactly. So I'm thrilled for that. Love this, super excited. And then also on the same display case, they had the Atlas Paradox, which is on my wish list, because I loved the first one and I wanted to get the second one. So I thought, what better opportunity, and of course it has a Target sticker on it that I have to deal with. And then I just got olive oil because we're out. That's what I went to Target for, was olive oil. I then got my reptile stuff, that's good to go, and I stopped at my library and I picked up Fire and Blood. This is the prequel to Game of Thrones. I am reading the Ice and Fire, Ice and Storm, whatever it's called series with some friends, and I need to read this one and then reread the first one in the series so that I can reread the second one in the series and catch up with everybody else. So I have this. It is 700 pages. And yeah, I need to read this one, the first one, and the second one by the end of February. So that is kind of what I read. I didn't listen to any audiobooks. I was just jamming to my music. So I don't really have any updates for you besides that. So Okay, friends, I have finished The Young Mungo. I don't know quite how I felt about it. I gave it 4 stars, but I stand by what I said about scenes that didn't really feel very important. It felt like it needed to be edited down a little bit. It was hard, like it was a tough read. That was what made it a good read. The things that didn't make it a good read were the scenes that I felt like didn't help the point of the story. But I did have some sections, I have 2 sections that I kind of want to read to you, because I think not only will they help you understand the author's writing, but they will help you understand the story. So this scene is between James, who is the love interest, and Mungo. And they have just had like a little bit of joking banter between the 2 of them. And it says, Mungo lunged at him and then cracked his fist off his chest. He dared him to strike back. Violence always preceded affection. Mungo didn't know any other way. Moma, who's his mom, would crack her sandal off his back, purpling bruises curdling his cream skin. Then she would realize she'd gone too far and pull him into the softness of her breast. Jody would scold and demean his poorly wired brain, and then, feeling guilty, make a heaped bowl of warm Weetabix and white sugar. Hamish would wind him with a fist and sit on his chest. When Mungo started calling for help, Hamish would clamp his hand over his face, that hot hand whose fingers covered his eye sockets and whose meat crammed into his open mouth. They would sit there for a long time, Hamish crushing the wind out of him until Mungo acquiesced, easy as flattened grass, soft as an Easter lamb. First came the hurt, then came the kiss. Wrapping his long arms around him, James raised Mungo off the floor in a bear hug. He squeezed with all his might until Mungo couldn't breathe. He hoped it would never end. So that is sort of the story of Mungo. Everybody in his life is very abrasive. Nobody treats him very well or very softly. He's mistreated by pretty much everyone, or not necessarily every interaction is a mistreatment, but it doesn't do him a service. Like, even the people that are giving him love are hurting him at the same time, or hurting him and then like using their love as an apology sort of deal. And so one of the biggest, I would say, parts of this book is Mungo's relationship with his mother, and it's incredibly toxic. She is an absentee mom, she's an alcoholic, and she constantly is going in and out of his life. But when she is there, when she is present, he is supposed to devote all of his attention to her. He's supposed to take care of her, and he feels indebted to her. He feels like he's supposed to take care of her. This is Jody, his sister, talking about their relationship. She hadn't needed to ask if it was about Moma. Everything about this boy was about his mother. He lived for her in a way that she had never lived for him. It was as though Moma was a puppeteer and she had the tangled, knotted strings of him in her hands. She animated every gesture he made, the timid smile, the thrumming nerves, the anxious biting, the worrying, the pleasing, the way he made himself smaller in any room he was in, the watchful way he stood on edge before committing, the kindness, and the big, big love. Jody often marveled at it, but mostly she hated it. The way he gave Moma with love without thought of reward, or maybe it was that he heaped and heaped it on in the hopes that he would get a fraction of it in return, like his love was some undervalued currency. Mungo's capacity for love frustrated her. His loving wasn't selflessness, he simply couldn't help it. Moma needed so little and he produced too much, so that it all seemed a horrible waste. It was a harvest no one had seeded, and it blossomed from a vine no one had tended. It should have withered years ago, like hers had, like Hamish's had. Yet Mungo had all this love to give, and it lay about him like ripened fruit, and nobody bothered to gather it up. Sort of a taste of, again, the writing and Mungo's character as a whole, his relationship with his family members and with his mother. There's definitely a lot of nuanced characters in this story that I wish had been explored a little bit more. I know the focus is very much on Mungo, as this is his story, but I wish that we understood Hamish a little bit more, because I think the large factor that makes Mungo different from Hamish is Mungo's sexuality and his sort of personality. So Hamish could easily have been a young boy who was soft, and through the circumstances that he endured, he has now become this gang leader who kills people. Like, he's killed people in this book. I would have liked more conversation around that, but I thought it was a good story. It's very melancholy. I wouldn't say that there's too many moments of hope. I do appreciate that there is kind of an ambiguous ending, and we don't know what's in store for Mungo going forward. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a good story, and I'm happy that I read it. I will definitely revisit it at some point and sort of see how my thoughts around it have changed over time. I'm excited to read Shuggie Bane, because I have heard, like I said, that one is sort of the better version of Young Mungo, and I want to see the full abilities of Douglas Stewart. So anyways, I now have these 3 books left to read. We have Black Cake, Star, Fevered Star, and the Book of Everlasting Things. I'm going to start next Black Cake. This was the next highest rated after Young Mungo, and this is about the siblings who receive a gift from their mother. And it's also pretty short. It's about 360 pages. I have heard that this has a trope in it that not a lot of people like, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm excited to get into it. I'm not familiar with this author's writing at all. I don't know if this is a debut or not, but we'll see how this goes. So hi friends, so I am 146 pages into Black Cake, which is part 2. It's very readable, very readable. It's very easy to get through. There's very short chapters, and I think that's going to end up being an issue. Not the short chapters themselves, but the constant change of POV. So in the beginning of the story, we have Benny and Byron, and they are brother and sister, and their mother has passed away, and they come back to their childhood home because she has left them a black cake and a voice recording that says that it will reveal secrets to them. And through these voice recordings in the first part, they have discovered that their mother was actually a child in Jamaica, and through a series of events, she had to leave Jamaica and move to Britain and assume a new identity because she was being accused of murder. There is a possibility of another sister, but we haven't really gotten to that part yet, so I'm not really sure where that comes in. That's all in the synopsis, but like every chapter is like a page or two long, except a few of them, and it switches points of view of like the siblings, the attorney for their mother that's handling the will and all that. Then you have random points of view from their mother's childhood, and just like so many points of view. And I think that's going to be an issue for the more like character work. I think we're gonna have issues with connecting to characters and understanding their motivations if we're not spending any time with them. So I think this might be a book that is fun, but it's not something that I am going to connect to emotionally, which is perfectly, you know, fine. For a debut novel, this is reading well. I mean, there is some repetition in things that are just irksome for me personally, but the writing is, you know, perfectly fine. And like I said, it's very, very quick. I have heard that this goes like absolutely bonkers, that there's like a heist, some pirate treasure hunting, a bunch of different stuff. So we'll see how that goes, but the first 147 pages, like, they were fine to get through. I don't really have any huge complaints, but like I said, it's not going to be something that I connect to emotionally. It might just be like a fun ride. It might be something that I check out one of this author's like other works and see how it goes. I will say this author uses time skips, which I think might be the trope that people don't like, because there's a time skip for her from her escaping the island to like a year or a year and a half later, which would help with character development if we saw those elements in sort of like the mindset. But if that's something that she does often, instead of explaining really big things, then that's definitely going to be an issue. But I'm kind of just going with it. Like, I'm not hating it by any means. But I can't say at this point, like, if the story goes exactly like this, if it's something that I'll remember like a year down the road, you know, which is, you know, the case for a lot of my books. I tend to forget what happens in books unless they're like 5 stars or just like egregiously bad, because I read so much, and you can't be expected to remember every detail about every book you read when you read so much. So I'm going to try to finish this today, but we'll see. Hi friends, happy Friday. So I haven't really done a whole lot of reading in the past like day or so, just because I was spending the majority of my day with my partner yesterday, which was nice, but I didn't really read a lot. I did end up DNFing Black Cake. I don't have the book with me because I ended up returning it to the library. But so I think I left off on my last clip talking about how the multiple changes in POV was a large problem. And immediately as I like picked up the book after I had done that update, we switched to a point of view of a character that was not even relevant to the story anymore. The vehicle of the story is that they're listening to videotapes or audio tapes that their mother recorded. How would she know the point of view of the people that she left behind on this island? How would she know their lives, their daily thoughts? Even if, say, towards the end of the book, she, like, came back to them and they sort of rekindled, they're not gonna know everything. They're not gonna remember everything. So that didn't work inside the vehicle itself. I understood what the author was trying to do with the change of POVs. I understood that it was an attempt to get a broad scope of the way that this main character, their mother, has affected each individual person's life. But that means if you have a wide cast of characters, that means that I am not emotionally connected to any of them. So her impact doesn't mean anything to me. And so I can understand what this author was trying to do, and I can see that as a debut novel, this was great. It was, you know, very readable, and I could see where they were trying to go, and I definitely am going to pick up more in the future. But I didn't want to read the book and then end up giving it a bad rating, because I'm trying to read books that I absolutely love, and if I know that it's something that I'm not going to absolutely love, I don't want to read it. Next up, that means that I am picking up Fevered Star. So this is the sequel to Black Sun. This is a fantasy story, and it is a pre-Columbian fantasy story, and it follows multiple points of view. And I'm going to timestamp this particular part of the video in which I'm talking about this book and the sequel, because I don't feel like I can get my comprehensive thoughts out there without spoiling anything. If you want to read the first one and this one, then I don't want you to be spoiled. So I'm going to timestamp it. If you want to just go to the next book that I'm reading for the video, feel free. But yeah, so this is the second book in the Black Sun series, and in the first book, the ending was kind of wild. So we are following multiple points of view. We are following a ship captain who in the beginning of Black Sun was tasked by this rich merchant to carry a cargo load to the city of Tova. And this cargo load basically only had Seripio in it. And Seripio is sort of a mysterious figure who has a budding relationship with the ship captain, but he is blind. When he was younger, the prologue of that book starts out with his mom burning his eyes out and then sewing his eyelids shut. And he is supposed to be the like reincarnation or the embodiment of the crow god, I think. And his intention of going back to Tova is to destroy the priesthood in Tova. So Tova is a continent. I believe it's an island. It's broken up into different clans of people, and they're sort of overseen by the priesthood, or I guess would be considered like the governing body. And the priesthood has a lot of corruption going on. And in the beginning of Black Sun, you are following the like lead priestess, and she started out as like a maid or something, and then she became a priest. And the priesthood is run by an entire group of people, like a council, but she's sort of like the high priest, and someone is trying to kill her. So you are following the like inner machinations, political machinations of the priesthood. And then you're also following a young boy whose mother was the leader of a clan, and his mother passes away. So he is now tasked with being the bodyguard of his sister, who's going to take over the clan. And he has a crow, like a crow mount, that plays a big part. Cannot remember for the life of me what like the magical elements of the story are, but I do know there's like visions, and Seripio can like use crows to kill people, and I believe he has some sort of like lightning power or something like that. And then the ship, the woman that runs the ship, she is like a siren or a mermaid or something like that. But I can't remember like all of the powers. But at the end of Black Sun, Seripio destroyed the city, basically. He killed a bunch of people, and they were going to kill him. And the clan's member's son, I think his name is like Ova or something. I'll have all of the names figured out, but he ends up saving Seripio, and seemingly Seripio is dead, but he like gets his crow, gets him on his crow mount, and then they fly off. And then the priestess who runs the priesthood basically gets overthrown, and she gets attacked and thrown in some water, I believe, and so does the woman that's running the ship. Sort of where we are at the end. The city has been destroyed, the priesthood is in shambles, and we don't really know where we're gonna go from there. So we're going to get into it. It is Friday. Don't really have much going on this weekend, so I'm really gonna try to read these books because I do need to move on to other books. I need to read the Game of Thrones series if I want to catch up to my buddy read by the end of the year. By the end of the month. So I do have other books that I want to knock out as well. So I'm going to try to get through this and the Book of Everlasting Things this weekend. So big boy. Okay, friends, it is the same day, but I have gotten 100 pages into Fevered Star, and I kind of wanted to do an update so I could sort of collect my thoughts, because this has been quite fast-paced, basically from page 1. So we are just kind of catching up with our characters and where they're going to go from the end of the first one. So we have Seripio, who is with Okawa. And Okawa is the one that is the brother to the clan's leader of the Crow clan. And then they are, in the very beginning, they have escaped to the mountains. They are recovering because Seripio, in the end of the first one, was injured. And he wanted to give Seripio time to recover before they went back. and they know that when they go back, a lot of the clans are going to be against Srepio, even though the Crow clan is going to be very pro Srepio, because he is the Crow god, or he's supposed to be. And we also have Zyla, who was left by pretty much everybody. She ended up, I can't remember exactly what she was doing in the last one, but she used her powers to help Srepio. She managed to get away before anybody noticed her, and she kind of shacked up with some of the crew members that were, you know, some of her crew members from when they made the travel to Tova. A woman that was on their crew, her uncle, who is going into the clan, the Crow clan area. And Srepio and Okoa are also in the Crow clan area now that Srepio has sort of recovered. And then lastly, we have Nara, who was the priestess, or the priest. And she wakes up after she was pushed into the water, and she was in a tomb in like the catacombs of another city, and she goes to find her brother, because at the end of the last book, she uses her brother to find a witch who helps her try to figure out who's trying to kill her. And she gets back to the city, she finds the witch, she finds out that the Watchers, who is like the priesthood, has completely disintegrated. Like, they're pretty much all dead, and she is trying to figure out where the scheme started, what's happening. So there has kind of been a wrap-up of where everybody is now, and sort of they've been on their path towards what they're going to do for the rest of the book. I think Srepio is going to have to work with the Crow clan in some way, specifically the matron, and then Zyla is trying to figure out who is killing the goddesses, or who was trying to kill her. And then Okia got notified in the first book that someone actually killed his mother, that his mother was murdered, and that's how his sister took over as matron. So there's a mystery there. And then I don't quite know what like Zyla's role in the whole thing is going to be. We're gonna have to get a little bit further in, but I am like 92 pages in, and I have heard that this is not the most satisfying book, but I do believe that this is a trilogy, and I don't know in what way this isn't satisfying, so we'll definitely have to see, because the first one was a very, very strong start to a series. And I think definitely the most interesting character to me is Srepio, because he has lost his powers after the big attack. So basically he stopped the sun, like an eclipse was happening, and he stopped the sun in the sky, and he also killed a bunch of people. But now he doesn't have any powers, and he doesn't know why. He doesn't know if he's lost the god, the Crow god, like the Crow god's still in him. He doesn't know what's going on. He can still access some powers through his blood, and he still can like communicate with crows and stuff, but he doesn't quite know where his powers went. So it creates an interesting, I think, personality shift in him. But it's going very, very quickly. I mean, the story just gets right into it immediately, and that's what I distinctly remember about the first one as well. It gets in real quick. So I will probably update you again tomorrow, or if I have anything, you know, of note to say. Okay, so I am in the last 75% of Fevered Star, and I wanted to give you an update and tell you how I'm feeling, because I am a very impulsive rater. So if the last 75% is very strong, it's going to affect my overall rating. And I wanted to sort of talk about the issues that I have been having, because I don't want those issues to get overshadowed by a possible strong ending. I don't know how the ending is going to go. It could be a bad ending and make this irrelevant, but this does not feel like the same book as Black Sun. This is very much a middle of the road fantasy. And I think the issue that I'm having is that it's not following the most interesting characters. So Srepio, like I said, is a god, or he had a god in him, and he's sort of supposed to be this person that is going to unite all of Tova under one banner. But also Nara, who is the sun priest, is trying to do the same thing, and she also has the sun god in her. And so it has this really interesting dynamic, because in the first book you have a lot of 3PO and you kind of grow to love him. He's kind of a fan favorite, and all of the characters themselves are interesting characters, but I feel like we are getting a lot of Nara and not a lot of 3PO, and it's sort of setting 3PO up as a villain, and it's just sort of an odd way to go. It's definitely lost a lot of the interest that I had for his character, and we haven't really gotten his point of view or what he has been doing. So there was an incident where a lot of religious fanatics regarding 3PO's presence or the Crow God's presence kind of flocked to Tova outside of the Crow Palace, and he is being held prisoner, but he like manages to escape, not escape, but like they unlock him so he can, you know, travel freely. And Zyla is there, and she tells a guard, hey, I know 3PO, can you give him this talisman, and tell him that Zyla is looking for him. So she ends up going off with another character who, we'll talk about that in a minute. She goes off with another character, and that guard that she gave the talisman to goes into the Crow Palace and tells him, Zyla is looking for you, she gave him this talisman. And he goes out into the city where these hordes of people are, and he is sort of flocked to, like they assault him in a way. They are demanding that he pray with them, that he bestow blessings on them and do things for them, and he becomes really overwhelmed, and so he like shapeshifts into a bunch of different crows and flies off. For a good portion of the last bit that I have read, he was not a present character. We were getting a Kokoa. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but we were getting his point of view a lot, where he's trying to figure out the mysteries of who killed his mother, and if there is some nefarious actions within the Crow with his sister, who is now the matron, and just like the council that runs the Crows with her, and just all of that. And because we already know the history behind the council, what they're doing, that's being revealed in other sections, and also the mystery behind his mother's death, his points of view are sort of superfluous to the author, because he is not doing really anything impactful. He is sort of floating through the story rather. Zyla goes off with this person who was the bodyguard of the Sun Priest in the first book, and they had a romantic relationship, and they now work with a rival clan inside Tova, but also a rival clan, like clans that are not in Tova, who are trying to unite Tova under one banner or one council for their own personal gain. She leaves with them and goes into enemy lines essentially, and they just start revealing all of these secrets to her, and she's just allowed to sort of live with them and go on these expeditions with them, and she's not trying to get away. She just randomly follows this person that she knows nothing about, that she just met like 3 seconds ago. And she's just allowed to walk free and hear all of these like really important secrets to their plan, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Her storyline doesn't make sense, and it seems like it's going to be a convenience for the sake of it. I don't know where it's supposed to lead. I don't know, because they're being very much set up as the villains, but also everybody is being set up as a villain, so it's just very unclear, I think. And the focuses of the book so far have not been that interesting. We also have Nara, who is the Sun Priest, who is working with her brother in the Maw, who is like a different section of this world, not in Tova, but like outside of Tova. It's where like the clanless people go, and they have their own, you know, lords and things like that. And some of the lords from the Maw, they're called bosses, are making plans with people in clans in Tova, like I said earlier. And she is working with her brother and the witch from the first one to bring the bosses together and unite them under the Sun Priest, so that the Sun Priest can be the overarching person for Tova, like the governing body for Tova. and that is also not very interesting. We've seen her heal her brother and some other things going on, but this just feels like a filler book. Like there's not many big moves being made, and we're focusing on characters that I don't really care about. Character motivations are non-existent or don't make sense. The moves that the characters make are not making sense, and I don't understand where we are going with Seripio's character. Are we making him a bad person because it really seemed like he was just a morally great character that we were trying to build up into a good person who just was kind of in shitty circumstances, and now his character is like non-existent and he's become sort of this like big bad that everybody talks about, but he doesn't feel like a character anymore. So I just don't understand why. I get that the story is like part of the story is these two gods that are sort of facing off against each other, but I don't even necessarily understand that. And I think that's another element that I would have liked better explained, like the magic system and the world and what these clans are and how they came about, and the outside clans and who they are. And I just think there's a lot of ambiguity and not much being explained, and it's just confusing, and I don't know where we're going. So that is sort of how I am feeling, which is unfortunate because, like I said, the first one was one of my favorite fantasies of 2020. I gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it, and this feels like a filler, and it feels like everything is very stagnant. So I'm going to come back to you when I have finished the last percent and give you my final feelings. But yeah, at the moment it's like a 3-star, and I'm very upset with the turn that it has taken. I am probably not going to update you right as I finish, because I have a live show over on Brie from In Love and Words channel at 8 p.m. It is currently 3 p.m. It's sort of part of her Meet the Romance Booktuber series that she's doing. I'll be over there featured on her channel, so I'll leave that linked below if you didn't get a chance to catch it. She has some interesting questions for me that I'm excited to talk about with her. So yeah, if I finish this in enough time to like update you, I will, but I don't have too much left. But yeah, so I'm going to come back to you again when I'm done with it, and we'll see how I'm feeling at the end. But like a 3-star, unfortunately. Alright, so it's been about an hour. I've finished Fevered Sun, and sort of as anticipated, I decided to give this 3 stars. I think the largest issue that I had, and I continue to have, is a lot of the characters just allow the plot and other people decide their story progression for them. Especially in the case of Koa and Zyla. They are just very passive. They don't really make any moves to better their relationships or their situation. And I don't feel like Zyla is making plans for her own life. She's very much just like, every decision she makes is about Seripio, and they haven't been united. They haven't seen each other this entire book, and still every decision she's making is like, okay, well, how is this going to affect him? And I didn't like the lack of agency on her part. I'm desperate for Rebecca Roanhorse to give her something. My assumption for the 3rd book is that she is going to become the Teak Queen, and she is going to rule, and she is going to lead the Teak into helping Seripio with uniting Tova and making it a more peaceful place or whatever. But I don't love that. And I feel like the main focuses of the book were very passive. I did appreciate that Nara became her own character, and she was making a lot of moves, which she didn't really do in the first one, but the ending was incredibly disappointing to me. All of the tension that we had in the book was centering around Seripio and Nara's final meeting and what was going to happen between the two of them, and that was a massive letdown for me. And I'm sure at some point they're going to come back together, and we'll see a kind of an accumulation of that relationship. But yes, it was very disappointing to me, and I think when the third one comes out, I'm not going to be itching to pick it up. Like, obviously, I wasn't itching to pick this one up. It came out in the beginning of last year, and I am just now picking it up, but I don't think I'm gonna be as excited for it. I think I'm gonna temper my expectations, because that was quite disappointing. So I am going to spend the rest of my time editing prior to the live show, so I probably won't pick anything else up, but I wanted to give you guys an update on me finishing that. So quite disappointing, but it is what it is sometimes. So we will talk again later. All right, friends, it is time to wrap up this reading vlog because I was editing it last night and it is quite long. I did end up starting the Book of Everlasting Things, and I can admit when I am defeated by a book, or at least not as smart as a book. So the writing in this is very, very flowery, and so I just don't think that I'm going to be able to read it physically and enjoy it as much. So I decided to pick up the audiobook for my library, and the library hold is quite long. I think it's like 10 weeks or something like that. So I will get back to this story eventually, but that's it for the books that I wanted to read for the video. I don't really have anything else that I want to add, so that is it. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on anything that I read in the video. If you've read them and loved them, I would love to know, or if you have any dissenting opinions, I would love to know that as well. If you don't have anything to say, leave a book of some sort down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you are looking for more content from me, you can check out my Instagram or my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It is a horror podcast. It's a lot of fun. Don't forget to subscribe if you're looking for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.